after that, I collected all the drawings. I printed an art book that had all of them in there. I still have copies of that. If anyone's interested, you can go on to any of my social media and to my shop. I have a link in all of the bios on all of the things in all the places, and you can find them there. And so since then, that was 2020, I've been sitting on it and just like in the back of my head, just kind of like stewing and brewing ideas about like, if I wanted to do more with this, like, who is this cult? Why are they doing what they're doing? What are their sinister goals? Is there a backstory there? Is there a history? I just left us off in a place where like the team is stranded in some other dimension.
Right.
What does that mean? Are they in the Nightmare Before Christmas, or are they just in a universe where those entities exist? And then I started thinking like, I just like in my head, the chronology of this was like the real Ghostbusters ended its broadcast run, I think in 1991. Like it was before Halloween of 1991, I think. And so in my head, I was like, cool. Then Ectober takes place in Halloween of 1991. Like this is the same like continuity of like, if the last season of Ghostbusters kept going, this would have been the Halloween episode of that year. Right. And so if that happened in 1991, like what's happening now? Like, is the world just without Ghostbusters? And for how long are they without Ghostbusters? What does that mean? Have they survived? And so I've just been like stockpiling these ideas, talking with people like Austin, my brother, and just coming up with like, what could come next? And I eventually mapped out a whole bunch of things and I was just talking with my brother about it. Like, these are things that even if I do all the things that I'm thinking about doing for Ectober now and in the future, they will never see the light of day. But it's like in my head, I know what this world is now. And I've gotten so expansive and chaotic with just the idea of like Ghostbusters fighting movie monsters. But I love taking the time to like, even for something that was meant to be a throwaway, making it make sense. Like I love that kind of stuff. And being able to like show up for just the obvious thing and then in the background see how things connect and be like, oh, that's cool. And so a lot of that is coming into play. And it's also a chance to like something that I've always wanted to see more of and that I try to bring to anytime I draw Ghostbusters, whether it's this or any other thing that I've done, is something of myself, like something that is just like, it's not just the real Ghostbusters. It's not just extreme Ghostbusters. It's not me trying to recreate what's already been done. It's me saying like, hey, if I got to do Ghostbusters of any sort, in this case, the real Ghostbusters, it's me doing the real Ghostbusters, and it's obviously real Ghostbusters, but it's clear that it's John doing the real Ghostbusters. And it's like, I'm bringing that kind of like anime sensibility with some of like the lighting and the art style and the influences that I've had in the ways that I take something like RoboBuster, who was in one episode of the animated series, but I love that idea.
Right.
For me, my rule for me, and this is not a judgment on anyone else or anything else, but like,
sure,
I prefer continuity over nostalgia. If you're doing it just for nostalgia's sake, nostalgia is a feeling. A feeling isn't a story. But continuity, that's an important part of a story. So like, look at what has happened and look at where you want to go. And if there's anything that has happened that makes sense logically, why that would be a part of getting where you want to go, then use it. Easter eggs are moments. Easter eggs are little things. That's not a story. You can't build a story off nostalgia and Easter eggs. But if you can find the little moments where the story works and the story hits and regardless of any Easter eggs, it's like, that was really good. And then you can say like, but it'd be this little sweet moment if when they did this thing happened, or this thing showed up, or somebody said this thing, and you got to put an Easter egg in there. Then that just makes it, that's like the cherry on top of a really good sundae. And so I like the part of that, like the Easter eggs are fun. The nostalgia is great if you can manage to find that feeling. But for me, my favorite part is just the continuity, seeing where we've been and seeing how that leads to where you want to go and how it can lead to where you want to go. And starting to look at, well, what do I love? Like outside of Ghostbusters, what do I love? What has influenced me? What kind of stories do I like? If I want to tell that kind of story in the world of Ghostbusters, what already exists there that I can bring toward that objective?
Right.
And the stuff that I came up with for this Ectober, and by the time people are listening to this, like we were talking about, we've had some technical difficulties. So things might be delayed a little bit, but something that people are going to see, and can kind of be pieced together already from just the teasers leading up to it. Two of the things that are going to factor in heavily this year are the kids that exist in the real Ghostbusters universe, particularly the Junior Ghostbusters and
Mm-hmm.
Robobuster. And that hits on multiple levels. Because I love taking the things that people hate and looking at them objectively and saying like, what can we do with these characters? Not to redeem
Yeah.
them, because like I said, I'm looking at them objectively. And also, I don't fully understand why people hate the Junior Ghostbusters, because I remember as a kid, that was like an affirmation for me.
Yeah, it was your entry point.
You watch Ghostbusters and you're like, man, these are so cool, but these are like grown-ups and I want to be a Ghostbuster when I grow up. And then there's the Junior Ghostbusters and like the guys tolerate them. They have their own uniforms. They have their little Ecto with the pumpkin launcher on the back. They're in the middle of the action. Like they have to be rescued sometimes, but like they get to throw traps and they get to be there when the boogeyman gets busted and they get to like,
Mm-hmm.
all this kind of like, to me, I was like, this is so sick. I wish I was a Junior Ghostbuster. Like to me, that's just like an affirmation of like, there's space for kids to be in this story too.
Right.
And so, and then you look at like stuff, there's little moments throughout the series and it's often the moments, for me, it defined what Ghostbusters was, because my favorite stuff was always the moments like the first Boogeyman episode where the kids show up at the firehouse and they're like, hey, the Boogeyman's coming out of our closet. We're terrified. We don't have a lot of money, but you can have whatever's in our piggy bank. And then you have that moment where Peter, someone who's like the guy who's out there like, we need money from you or we're not doing this. He looks at them and he's just like, you know what? This one's on the house, kids. It's like to me, that's when you go, that's Ghostbusters. It's when
Right.
you have those moments of like, they realize we're the only ones who do what we do and it matters in a way that not a lot else
Mm-hmm.
matters. We're the only ones who believe some of these people. So yes, we need to stay afloat and we need to make money and this is a business, but more than that, like these people need help and we're here for that. And so you look at kids like the Carter kids from that first Boogeyman episode, the Junior Ghostbusters, Lee and Alec from the Grundle episode, Kenny
Mm-hmm.
Fenderman, who really wanted to be a Ghostbuster. Like in that world, if the Ghostbusters disappeared and something happened that
Yeah.
needed to be addressed, these are the people who would be making their way to each other and being like, they helped us. They made me feel like I didn't have to be afraid. How can I
Right.
help? What can I do? And so the idea of them coming together to try and fill in the gaps when the guys have gone MIA, because none of them know exactly what happened. They weren't there when it happened. They weren't involved in the first October. So them coming together and, there's some little teases in the video that was released on the last day of the countdown that alludes to obviously like them firing up another Robobuster. The idea being that like there's the original Robobuster from the series, there's the one that the team had with them in the first October, which is Unit 2, and then now they're turning on Unit 3, and there's a data file that you see on the screen for a little bit that says it has increased connectivity and scanning capabilities that could potentially cross dimensions but haven't been tested. And so the idea is like if they turn it on and it can almost like Bluetooth style connect to the camera trap that they had, the same way that
Right.
Unit 2 is connected to the camera trap, then it could lock onto it and they could figure out where the guys are. They could figure out where the team disappeared to. But then this thing happens where like the the idea is that the son of one of the cult members is like, I'm going to finish what my father started. Like I'm going to prove myself and I'm going to finish what he started and I'm going to pick up where he left off. And so it's playing on a lot of stuff that tickles my fancy, stuff that I love in
Mm-hmm.
storytelling. And it also allows me to play more into the anime stuff that I love of like, mecha anime like Pat Labor and Evangelion and Mobile Suit Gundam, especially Gundam, because almost every big Gundam story starts with like, there's a conflict and things are chaotic and there's some kid in the middle of it who's trying to
Right.
escape and get to safety. And then he finds this prototype Gundam that is just there and thinks like, I can either keep running or I can stop and do something about this.
Right.
And so there's kind of that dynamic here where it's like you have these kids who are like, we're going to do something about this with this robot that we found.
What it reminds me of in a way, as I was thinking about it, is there's a few different stories in this canon, but like within Doctor Who,
Mm-hmm.
there's like several different stories where like there's one where a bunch of different people who have like crossed paths with the Doctor are trying to figure out why the Doctor has been off planet and they haven't seen him, and there's like things going on, and so they all come together from people who are like different people who had connections with him, who found each other on the internet to try and track down the Doctor and figure out where the Doctor is.
Yeah.
And there's another one where like Bernard Cribbins leads like an entire team of old folks from an old folks home. Like who are all like retired people who are off looking for the Doctor, but it's kind of funny, like, and all it's kind of the same like under like, I don't know, narrative kind of pitch of like the characters you've met over the course of the series, who were just like passing characters, maybe somebody who worked in a booth, a newsstand or something, come back and like, oh, here they are,
And this is something, again, playing into that idea of continuity. Like one of my favorite things to do is when you have a story that's been going on for a while and now you come into a place of like, you get to write the next chapter or help with it or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You get to kind of look at the path that has been carved, and whether that is the good that you've done. In this case, it's looking at like, we've helped all these kids and now these kids are in a position where it makes sense for them to be like, they want to pay it forward or they want to pay them back and like fill the gap. But also looking at like, what's the chaos that we've caused? If a story is like a car with the brakes cut off and it's going to keep going, you're going to leave some destruction in your path. And I don't mean that to always mean it in a bad way, but just like, it's going to change things. And sometimes it's going to change things for good and sometimes it's going to change things for bad. So I like looking back and saying like, well, what bad things has it caused? Has it caused any bad things? What bad things could it have caused that nobody's thinking about or haven't thought about yet? And then seeing if there's a story in that coming full circle to kind of like bite them in the butt. And I think there's also going back to the idea of like continuity, forward momentum, and evolution versus Easter eggs and nostalgia and kind of doing the same thing over again.
Well, I'm excited to be following along with it as it comes out, because you're going to be putting it out over social media, right?
Yes, you will be able to follow along on X, I guess is what we're calling it now, Twitter. Instagram will be the main place. Instagram is going to be the big one where you will be able to see the still images, but also any videos and that kind of stuff that gets posted. But then I also, if you're on Blue Sky, I will be over there too. Blue Sky doesn't have video, but I'll be posting the artwork. On X, I will just be posting the videos, and there will be video versions of each individual drawing as well, just because I don't want to play around with all the AI business. I think that's a big mess, and I don't want to just throw my art out there to be swallowed up by science.
Oh, I can appreciate that.
And if you follow me on Facebook, which I don't do a lot on Facebook, my Facebook is mainly just like family and close friends and like a few people that are just like acquaintances and stuff. I post it on there so they can see it, but Mainly it'll be, and then TikTok. So if you have TikTok, I will be
Gotcha.
posting the video version of it on TikTok as well. Yeah.
Cool. So people can follow you at John Yurcaba 4, or is it John? I can't remember your account now. What is it?
Yeah, that's it. No, you're right. It's at John Yurcaba 4. And then I think even
The number
on
4.
yeah, the number 4. So JOHNYURCABA and then the number 4. And that's TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and then on Blue Sky, I think it's also John Yurcaba 4 dot Blue Sky dot whatever. But honestly, like if you're on Blue Sky and you just type my name in the search bar, it'll come up. So
Well, wherever you want to find John, you totally should, because I think this Ectober is going to be very exciting. This story is going to be fun to watch and unfold.
yeah,
And I think it's cool that you're doing sort of deep cuts continuity work. I love it. Like that you're
yeah.
bringing back stuff from real Ghostbusters that I'm like, oh, I forgot about that as you
Well,
talk about it. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of neat.
That's the fun thing. And again, getting into like being blasphemous, I guess, for some people. I know there's a lot of people who are just like, oh, like even hardcore Ghostbusters fans will be like, the real Ghostbusters was only good for the first 2 seasons and then it became trash. And I'm like, literally my favorite season is season 4. It might be the shortest season. I think there's only like 6 or 8 episodes in it, but it's wall to wall bangers. To me, it's the animation peaked. It's at its crispest. The colors are the richest. The proton streams look closer to what they were in the movie than they ever have. Like the effects of like the trap and the technology and everything. Just from a visual perspective, like it is to me one of my biggest influences even now. Like as I draw stuff, like that is, if you could put together like a Pinterest board of like what influenced John's art to look the way it does, season 4 of the real Ghostbusters would be on the Pinterest board.
Right.
And it's like, it's the Robo-Buster episode. It is Poultrygeist, the Were Chicken episode. It is the one where Winston and his dad have the 2 halves of the key to like the land of lost objects. And it it starts sucking parts of New York City into the other dimension. It's the episode where like the Native American spirit haunts the junkyard and they start pouring toxic waste and he like mutates and becomes gross and possesses Ecto and all that kind of, it's that season. And to me, that feels like this perfect balance of just like creepy horror concepts butting up against like modern technology and clashing.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, like that's like a core part of Ghostbusters. It's like ancient, eldritch, horror, unknown, paranormal, and science and modernity, and just like where they meet and butt heads, and then the Ghostbusters come into play. And that whole season is just, I love it so much. Don't get me wrong, I love episodes from across the whole run. Like the Grundle is maybe it's up there like top 3, and obviously like all the Halloween episodes and stuff, but that whole season for me is just like I will watch that on repeat and not get tired of it.
Well, I'm excited to sort of recapture some of these things from the real Ghostbusters cartoon that I've kind of forgotten about and processing and reading through and looking at your art.
And like I think hopefully by the time this episode's up, people will get a glimpse of like some of the characters that are going to be in it, and even just in like the way that I dress them. Like they're going to be wearing a certain clothing item and you won't necessarily recognize it at first, but it is based off of something else from the real Ghostbusters that I'm like, oh, well, if this was a thing that existed, maybe that's a thing that they could have continued to evolve for some reason. And they wore something like it similar in another episode. So maybe that's what that was. And this is the next evolution of it. And it makes sense that they still have these kind of like hanging in a closet if they need them.
Yeah. So now the key question is, will your brother be doing a soundtrack album?
Can confirm. He will be. This whole thing has been such a ride. And, at one point we were talking with Austin Young about doing some prop work and some video components. And ultimately, like, that timeline wise just didn't line up. But me and him and Jeremy have already been going back and forth just about the wider world of like Ectober, and just like getting way like too crazy for the sake of a fan project, but loving it and just getting excited about
Yeah.
it, and talking about like, what can we do for October 3? Like, what can we add to this? How can we expand it next time? But the one thing that I always wanted to, like, beyond art, the one thing I think that makes October is the music. And it has
Yeah.
always felt like, at its core, at least, a joint project between me and Jeremy. And we want to expand it. We want to have more people involved, but that is kind of like the beating heart of October. And
Yeah.
so I even told him, I was like, hey, if you're too busy, I totally understand. Like, you have your own life. You're an adult. It makes sense. Like, do not let me pressure you if you can't do it. But, you know, like, we can easily just be like, hey, that original theme song is the October theme song, and it is used for every season if you want.
Right.
And he was like, no, no, no. Like, I want to go back in. I want to do something. Even if we did use the original theme song, I want to spruce it up. I want to make it new and like add some elements to it. But I want to try to come up with something different. And I can confirm that he did come up with something different. And like, as of this recording, as of you and me talking, I have not heard it yet, but I'm very excited because I haven't heard anything from it, but he's been sending me little screenshots of like his music set up on his computer,
Gotcha.
and like the different labels that he has for the different sounds he's included, and like the weird names he's giving them, and just being like, what do you think this is? And I'm just like, I don't know. What does Gundam Twinkle mean? So it's just, but again, like, he and I, like, when I got into anime, I was 12 years old, staying up late to watch Toonami on Cartoon Network. And so not only am I thinking of like these hard hitting anime theme songs that are part of the show, I'm thinking of like, and this is, so this October, the first one was just called October. This one's called October Midnight Run. And run is in
Gotcha.
parentheses in all caps with an exclamation mark. And part of that is because when you would stay up late and watch Toonami, there was Toonami Midnight Run, which is like, during the day Toonami, it was, you know, you'd have somebody say like, I'm the Great Destroyer, and I'm gonna send you to your doom. And then they'd show that same episode again late at night on Midnight Run, and it would be uncut. And it would be that same character, instead of saying, I'm the Great Destroyer here to send you to your doom, they'd say, I'm the God of Death, and I'm gonna send you straight to hell. And so it was like the edgier version, right? Um, and then it being in parentheses. So that's generally speaking where the name came from. It's both a nod to that and a nod to like
Yeah.
the kids needing to like go fast and get this done by midnight before it's too late.
Right. Yeah.
And then that's also going to play into the music, because some of the music that they used for the programming block of Toonami, it was very just like lo-fi hip hop kind of stuff. And so I know that's been influencing my brother, along with just the anime theme song sound. And then also, Run being in parentheses is a nod to like the Neon Genesis Evangelion movies, which had titles like You Cannot Advance, and not was in parentheses, or like, you know, You Are Not Alone, and not was in parentheses. So it's just left and right. We're looking like, that's where we have the fun with the Easter eggs and that kind of stuff, where it's like, let's get the story down, but then wherever we can, it's like, hey, wouldn't it be fun if we just did this? So
Yeah.
it's just left and right. It's just me and my brother writing a love letter, mainly to Ghostbusters, but also to just so much other stuff that influenced us.
That's cool. I'm excited to see it. I want to encourage everybody to go out and find you on Instagram and on Blue Sky, if they are on Blue Sky, or on X, or on Facebook to a limited extent.
Or TikTok.
At John UK before. Here at TikTok at John UK before. John, thank you so much for coming on the podcast again and visiting with us. I really appreciate having you on.
Absolutely.
And you know, hopefully we'll get to talk soon after there's a trailer.
Yes.
When we get to
oh my gosh.
trailer,
if
we can
there's a
talk
trailer,
about what was in it.
I will happily come and talk about it all night long.
Sounds good. Hope to talk to you again soon. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.